So Florida has issues. Florida State has issues. Miami used to have issues, but now doesn't. I've seen a lot of talk on social media, the college football space, about the idea that Florida State should be top 10 teams every year because of the amount of talent in the state. And I can't deny that. There are, 5-star recruits, blue chippers in Florida. There's nowhere else there is prevalent outside of Texas. Florida is fertile recruiting ground. And yet, Florida stinks. Florida State's 0-3 with losses to Memphis, Georgia Tech, and Boston College after going 13-0 last year. And there's a really kind of a simple fix that nobody really wants to have the conversation, because on paper, it's simple. On paper, it's really easy to not be bad. It's a little harder in practice. But when push comes to shove, it's quarterback play. When you're good at quarterback, it's real easy to be good. When you're bad at quarterback, and I don't know how you watch Florida State and Florida right now and come to any other conclusion, you're not going to be very good. Florida State supposedly paid a lot of money to DJ Uiagalelei to come to Florida State. And at one point yesterday, he was 5 of 7 passing for 6 yards. He can't throw the ball downfield, and Florida State knows he can't throw the ball downfield. And unfortunately for them, their opponents know that he can't throw the ball downfield too. Florida brought in Graham Mertz as a transfer quarterback, and I'm not 100% sure why they thought they were going to turn things over to him when Graham Mertz couldn't be successful in the offense at Wisconsin that consisted of survive long enough to turn around and hand the ball off to a running back and then throw the ball to the tight end and play action pass. He couldn't manage that. And Florida thought he was going to come in and be some sort of transfer portal savior for them. Look where they are. DJ Lagway is a highly touted prospect that is not prepared to start week 3 of his college football career and perform really well against a really good Texas A&M defense. Like, at the end of the day, like, all of these things continue to be true, and it's really not that hard to figure out. Miami in the past has not been great. When was the last time you felt Miami had a real good quarterback? Brad Kaya going to fit that bill for you? No, probably not. Tyler Van Dyke left Miami, went to Wisconsin. Have things gone well for him? No. Because the quarterback play's not great. Florida State went 13-0 last year. Jordan Travis was pretty good at that whole thing. Miami now brings in Cam Ward, who got to be named the preseason ACC player of the offensive player of the year. You know why? Because people know that Cam Ward pretty good. It really kind of, is it more complex than that? Yeah, but when you boil everything down together, is your quarterback play really good? Because if it is, then you've got a lot of issues solved. You got a lot, like, you can look past a lot of things when your quarterback play is really, really, really good. And there are some things you can't look past when your quarterback play is really, really bad. And Florida State's quarterback play right now is pretty bad. Florida, like, Graham Mertz is never going to be the answer for the Gators. You could hope that DJ Uiagalelei was going to be the answer at Florida State. He wasn't, isn't, and hasn't been. I don't think it takes a whole lot to figure out that, like, hey, when you boil all of these things down together, this is the issue. You saw it at Texas. Quinn Ewers is really good. He goes down with an injury. They got a very good backup. And Arch Manning played really well. We'll probably talk about it later in the week. When your quarterback plays great, you got a real good chance of being good. When your quarterback play is not great, It sure makes it a hell of a lot more difficult to be good at that whole offensive football thing. It really truly is that simple. And yet, there are some places, and I don't think that Florida and Florida State should be one of those places where you struggle to be a quarterback recruit's dream school, where you should be able to recruit. You should be able to get kids out of the transfer portal with the idea of like, hey, these are big-time football programs that have a history of putting not just quarterbacks, but other players into the NFL. Like, do you want to play with future NFL players? Do you want to play with NFL prospects? Because you can do that at Florida and Florida State, in theory, if your recruiting is up to snuff. Now, there are bigger questions and bigger problems. I don't think, and I might get into this later in the week, Billy Napier didn't get to Florida and then start taking stupid pills. Mike Norvell didn't win 13 games last year and start taking stupid pills. There are extenuating circumstances outside of just the quarterback play. But it's undoubtedly the most important position in the sport. And when it's the most important position, you need to be really good at that important position. And neither of one of Florida and Florida State is. And Miami has gotten great at that position. When push comes to shove, that's really kind of all there is to it. Florida and Florida State stink, and they stink at the most important position. Miami looks pretty good, and they're really good at the most important position. Now it's time to go over our Sunday Stiff Arm Trophy update. Of course, it's ridiculous and preposterous to decide who you would vote for to win the Heisman Trophy in mid-September, but that's why we're doing it. It's fun and ridiculous. I would still vote for Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State running back, to win the Heisman Trophy if my ballot was due today. Of course, I do not have a Heisman Trophy ballot, but I would like one. So if you could hook a brother up, let me know. Get in touch, have your people, call my people, and we'll get me a Heisman Trophy vote. Ashton Jeanty has run for 9 touchdowns through 2 games. So that makes picking him to win the Heisman. Like he had 1,300 yards last year as probably the most productive group of 5 back in America. Had 13 rushing touchdowns. He has 459 yards through a couple of games and 9 touchdowns. So, going to go ahead and choose Ashton Jeanty to win the Heisman Trophy right now. Jalen Milroe has vaulted up my board by a lot. When you put together that how many players have had multiple passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns in games to start their seasons, and you look at the list of those folks who are also Heisman Trophy winners. Jalen Milroe had 3 passing touchdowns against Wisconsin, 2 against South Florida, 3 against Western Kentucky, 2 rushing touchdowns against Wisconsin, 2 rushing touchdowns against South Florida, 2 rushing touchdowns against Western Kentucky. He is having a very, very, very good junior season where he's completing 70% of his passes. He's thrown for almost 600 yards, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions, has 6 rushing touchdowns. Jalen Milroe, if Alabama stays on that pace, is going to be in the hunt. 1, because Alabama is going to stay good. 2, because the Heisman Trophy race has become who's the quarterback for one of the best teams. And then also because he's earned it. If you're going to continue to have 2 rushing touchdown performances every week, and you're throwing for a couple hundred yards and rushing touchdowns, throwing touchdowns every week, you deserve to be on that list. And then finally, Tetairoa McMillan, the Arizona wide receiver, is having a really, really, really nice season up to this point. I don't expect Tetairoa McMillan, who is probably going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft next year, I don't expect him to continue to have be listed in this race, right? Like, I don't expect him to I don't expect Arizona to continue on the pace of like, hey, they're a top 25 team, because they got paced by Kansas State over on Friday night. But Tetairoa McMillan had an 11-catch game against Kansas State for 138 yards after having a 10-catch game for 300 yards in the season opener. So he's at 453 yards and 4 touchdowns after 3 games with 23 catches. You're averaging 20 yards a catch as one of America's best wide receivers. I think you deserve to be on the list. So Tedero McMillan, who might be in his last weeks or days, unless he just continues to go off, takes number 3 on my Heisman Trophy ballot on September 15th, which is ridiculous to even think about. But that'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you think my Heisman Trophy ballot sucks, let me know in the comments down below. We'd love to hear from you. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.